podcast about the MCU, Marvel, and specifically WandaVision. We're going to be talking about episode 4 of WandaVision.
We interrupt this program.
That's
Thank you.
wow. Way to show and not tell, Pete.
I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
Shouty Pete.
We are very excited to talk about episode 4 of season 1, maybe the only season. We'll know. Right now, it's a limited series. We'll see what happens.
Alex, stop talking about these harsh realities.
Yeah, geez.
Maybe this is the final season of humanity.
Oh, wow, man. Jesus.
Alex is going through it. This show's in your head.
Pretty soon, as soon as my reality bending powers, as soon as my hex powers develop, that's it for all of you. That's all.
Well, if you keep eating those sketchy ass Oreos, yeah, I'm sure it might happen for you.
Yep,
fair enough.
That's how it works.
So here's what we're going to do. First of all, go watch WandaVision episode 4 because we're going to be talking very broad strokes, probably immediately veer off into theories and things like that. There's so much to talk about in this episode. So definitely watch that first because spoilers past this point. We probably could talk just quality-wise, what we thought about this episode versus the other episodes, as well as theories and speculation and Easter eggs and things like that. But before we do, it's time for everybody's favorite segment, or rather Pete's favorite segment, which is corrections and additions.
Yes. And just so we're clear, this is when Alex walks us through things that he found that he said incorrectly, and Pete and I don't ever acknowledge any mistakes.
That's right.
Yep, pretty much. So the first one right off, this is one we called right off at the beginning of the third episode. I griped about the lack of episode titles for the show. The little caveat here is we actually taped episode 3 of our podcast before they released episode titles. Now they are there. I'll read them off so I don't get them wrong. First one is filmed before a live studio audience. Second one is don't touch that dial. Third one, now in color. And the fourth one is we
interrupt this program.
He gets it. He gets it.
So I feel like there's a pattern there. I haven't really caught on to what it is yet, but there's definitely something going on.
I can't think of anything because of all the shouting from Pete.
Regardless, though, that's what's going on. Obviously, they're calling on TV tropes throughout there, so that's pretty cool. A couple of other things. These are little Easter eggs people mentioned to us either on Twitter or on our Patreon Slack, patreon.com/comic book club. Come join us, hang out. We've been speculating wildly about. It is fun about WandaVision. So one thing, this is from the first episode. A lot of folks caught on to this, but Agnes called out if she, I'm forgetting the exact line, but she mentions a beer, and she says the beer would be named June 2nd. After her anniversary with Alf. That was the start of the Salem witch trials. A lot of people caught on to this. Certainly there's been a fair amount of speculation about what's going on with Agnes. I'm sure we'll have more this episode as well. But yeah, there you go. More evidence that maybe she is not just a regular resident of Westview, but perhaps the witch Agatha Harkness from
100%.
the comic books. This is one that nobody thought it was as interesting as I did, but I thought it was interesting. The name of the town they're in is WestView, which is WV, just like WandaVision. I don't think that's a clue.
No, that's just letters. That's just reading letters.
No, but I mean, like, what the show is doing really well, even through episode 4, without jumping ahead, is they're layering in things that aren't necessarily like, this is a clue, but just additional things that show they are paying attention to every detail that's going on.
And that's not an Easter egg. That's what we call an Easter basket, which is the not fun part, but a detail that did happen.
It's equally tasty, though.
True, exactly. Eat your whole basket, and I'm in the whole
Start with
thing.
the basket. Eat your basket before you get your candy. That's what my parents always said.
Nice. I saved the basket for last.
I want to just say, though, in the beginning of the app, when they ask the cops where they're from, and they say Eastview, I touched my heart because Eastview Mall is where I grew up and would ride my bike to play video games and stuff like that. So that was just like a little personal shout out.
Are you an Easter egg, Pete?
Yeah, he's our Easter egg. And eventually he's going to hatch. He's going to hatch into a full-blown Easter monster.
They had this creepy theme song, though, that always fucked with me. It was like Eastview Mall, just around the corner. Like, it was like this creepy thing that you couldn't escape if you ever went there. And I did feel like I was in this kind of like time warp trap thing, playing video games for hours on end.
There it is.
This is great. I'm very excited about this. You're going to bring the jersey to this podcast going forward, Pete. The last two things I wanted to mention, I'm sure there are plenty more Easter eggs that we have not mentioned in the first three episodes of the podcast. One that I thought was super neat, as the color was changing at the end of the second episode, you could see the Hydra facility that Pietro and Wanda were held at. It's even like legitimately the shot from the Age of Ultron that they put onto the wallpaper there.
Very cool.
Certainly reading credence to some theories. Perhaps we're going in other directions with this episode, which we'll get to later on. And then the last one that I saw a couple of people catch on to the internet, the house number is 2800, which I believe has long been rumored to be the universe number of the MCU, if you wanted to put it in with the comics and everything. But specifically, it's a call out to the fact that the House and Vision, the series by Tom King and Gabriel Walta, was 616 after Earth 616, which is the designation of the main Marvel universe in the comics. So just, again, I think like it's not pointing to anything. It's not like suddenly they're going to go into comic book world so much as we're getting more fun Easter eggs and attention paid to detail.
And
Right.
the one other thing, the headpiece from
right.
what's his name, the villain from
Grim
the Vision,
Reaper?
from Grim Reaper, the Vision series, that is at least partially perhaps used as a source material here, was hidden in the credit sequence. I want to say the title sequence.
I feel like we talked about this
we?
actually because we went on a whole riff about Wonder Man and whether they're going to turn Vision into Wonder Man at the end or something like that.
Yes.
But again, there's probably many more things we didn't catch on to. Let's move into episode 4 proper before we talk about plot points or anything like that, because a lot of stuff is going on here. This, of course, is the episode that does, as I speculated, took us outside.
Hold for applause. Hold for applause.
Don't like list the things that like points that like, oh, I missed all this, and then be like, oh, I got this one thing right.
I mean,
you gotta
have to be proud of myself.
you gotta call it when you see it.
I gotta get it back somehow.
Yeah,
that cred.
I mean, how many times did Babe Ruth point to the outfield and then he finally hit a home run, right?
Hey, 1 out of 100 is still 1 out of 100. That's what I'm talking about.
That's a hell of a motto.
Anyway, this is the episode that takes us outside. We loop back to the very beginning. We go back even to the blip, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Big deal right there. Yeah. Follow Geraldine. She disappears into the dome. We get to see outside with Darcy from the Thor movies. We get to see Jimmy Woo from the Ant-Man and the Wasp. I was about to say Ant-Man movies, but it's just in the second one. They're all teaming up together with some new folks, try to figure out what's going on in this dome. By the end of the episode, we loop back to where we left off with Geraldine, a.k.a. Monica Rambeau, that we kind of knew that based on casting, pop it out there and say, Wanda, it's all Wanda. This is her fault, and that's where we leave off. So that's the broad strokes of the plot. But what do you guys think about this episode? Very different episode, obviously, because we're not in sitcom land at all at this point.
Yeah, I was like geeking out when we saw kind of like the dust reverse from the movies where it was like people coming back.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit. I just like really, I thought it was really cool the way we've been in this separate TV world and then kind of went into what we know and love from the movies. So I thought that was a really cool, crazy way to start.
It was. And
how do you feel about this one, Justin?
I think there are two things that really stood out to me. One, the way that they were able to just really drop into the Marvel Cinematic Universe tone here. Having the first 3 episodes are very much their own thing. And then instantly it was like, oh, this is a series of scenes that could be in any Marvel movie. And I love that. It's amazing that they're able to do that so quickly, and how much I, as a viewer, love the like one-liners, action. Everything's moving very quickly, but at the same time, we're really getting character moments. They're so good at that in all the Marvel shows and movies. And the second point is just how they wrap everything up in this episode so that we can move forward from here into like the actual story of the show.
Yeah. I've been worried about Pete yelling at me all day at this point that I'm about to say. He's definitely going to be like, no, fuck you.
Oh, this is very exciting.
I'll just pull the Band-Aid off here.
Wow.
I really like this episode. I agree with you guys. Just seeing the MCU, like cinematic, like literal cinematic nature of it getting the cold open, going to the Marvel Studios logo, going into the main episode, wrapping everything up. Super awesome, well filmed. I loved a lot of moments that I'll definitely be talking about. I also think this was the weakest episode of the series.
What the fuck? What are you talking about?
That was like when your dog is waiting for food and you hold it over his nose for like a couple minutes and then finally throw it in his big old mouth.
Here's why: is
We
I thought
can't
this was
keep
great.
living in crazy town. We need some reality. So
No,
we can
here's
enjoy
why.
it.
Here's why. I agree with you. I think this episode was necessary.
So
Like I
don't
said, I
say that.
liked it. I liked it. I didn't hate this episode. I'm not saying it's garbage.
It
What I'm
sounds
saying
like
is
that's what you're saying.
something that we've been talking about, or at least I've been talking about with the first 3 episodes, is I've been
Sounds
trying
like
to look
you've
at them
been
as like an episodic nature. Like, how do they work as an episode of television? Because even though they produced Falcon and the Winter Soldier first, this is the first chance we've seen Marvel Studios do a TV show. So
Yeah.
are they trying to do the classic, oh, it's more of a 6-hour movie, or are they actually trying to do TV shows? So far, they've been really successful on multiple levels in each individual episode of layering in little tiny bits of the plot, making it work as a classic sitcom, but also tying into something emotionally with Wanda and Vision. Here, I do think there was something thematic, definitely, which we could talk about in a second. But on an emotional level, it felt like more it was filling in gaps in the plot versus having that strong emotional theme weaving through out of it.
No, it was going back and being like, all these weird things we're going to explain so you don't seem like a crazy person who's hanging on to this stuff, being like, what does this mean? What does this mean? We're going to kind of go back, show you from a different vantage point of what's going on. So then when we get to the end of the episode and we're right back in the emotion of like after she gets thrown out, now we're really feeling
So
things.
you feel like it's the sort of thing where somebody explains something and then they explain the same thing back to you, but in a different way.
No, what I'm saying is you can't say garbage statements like this is the weakest episode when this episode explained things so you could
To be very
enjoy it
clear,
moving
I'm talking
forward.
about you, Pete. You were
Yeah.
explaining the thing back
Yeah,
to me. That
that's what was
I
happening.
know.
We're in
I
agreement.
know.
We're in agreement. You're just
We're not in
ignoring the
agreement.
last point that I made, Pete.
I feel like
We're not
I'm
agreeing.
entrapped in a Scarlet Witch bubble with an especially shouty episode of
Here's
Crossfire.
what I think was going on. I mean, I'll just throw
Well,
it out. Oh,
here,
you
let
wanted to
me
make a point
say,
for it, Justin?
yeah, let me say,
Yeah.
I think you're both actually right. Like this dramatically was the weakest episode because they had to do all the work that Pete's talking about that he was looking forward to. This was like a classic middling episode where, you know, you have your fun, you eat your steak, then you got to eat your vegetables before you get your candy. And this is the vegetables, and here comes candy when we get to see all the ways they're going to confront Scarlet Witch. And I think they
Yeah,
gave
but
us
Justin-
they gave us tastes of that when we get to see her hex powers activated. We get to see the stuff that we're like, yes, we've wanted this, but we're still not getting it. So it's a explanation episode tied in with like little pieces of what we're going to get next.
Yeah, but here's the thing. As you get older, the vegetables become something that you look forward to as well, okay?
I mean, that's not
There
true
are
about you,
certain-
for instance.
Okay, well, fine. You know, me aside, but normal people would
Yeah.
agree that
Pete, like me, is a basket first kind of guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think that regardless of how, I just can't believe you guys want to say this is a shitty episode when there were so many
Nobody
great
is saying that.
We both
Literally,
liked
both-
it.
literally both of you people, you called it a middling episod. You
I
said
did
it was
not.
the weakest
I
one
did.
of the thing. I was saying, Justin, pay
Yeah.
attention.
But
So,
it-
like, the thing is, it had those great Marvel moments, which is why we're all here. So saying that this is a bad episode is insane to me.
Nobody
That's
said
like
it was a bad
saying,
episode.
oh my God.
What I think what it is though is the first 3 episodes had these great, especially the first 2 for me, had these great breathtaking moments where you're like, oh, I can't believe they're doing that. That's such an interesting way of doing that. It's so meticulously done. While this dropped back into a form of storytelling that we've seen before, that we've seen in the movies, and it's a welcome. I'm welcoming seeing that, but it doesn't have those big swing moments that I think really made it stand out in the first 2.
Oh, really? When you got to see what Vision really looks like, that wasn't a big swing. You
That was
motherfucker?
cool. That was cool, but that wasn't a
Well,
big
then
swing.
what are you
What was
talking
that?
about?
Here, can we get away from this because I feel like we're
Yes.
going to get stuck at a
All right,
Pete
well,
yelling at
don't
us.
Set
Hold
me
on.
up for like madness and then get mad at me when I fucking react how you wound me up to react.
You've set me up for madness.
That's my favorite part of King Lear when he shouts that.
Yeah.
This is your fault.
You
Cordelia.
daughters of mine, you set me up for madness.
Ah, classic scab. Here's what I did like about the episode that I thought was really smartly done. It was more an intellectual theme than an emotional one, and what they were playing with here, I think, is the idea of people viewing and analyzing and breaking down TV. Like, it's kind of an obvious thing, but I like the fact that they got to a point where in the middle chunk of the episode, love the stuff with Monica, thought that was really good, but she disappears for most of the episode, so it's hard to hang it emotionally on her. The stuff with Darcy and Jimmy Woo, they're reacting like us, the TV viewer. So I think the theme that they were playing with here was spoiler culture, Easter egg culture, analyzing these things. You need to look no further than Jimmy Woo at his whiteboard, jotting down the very things the viewers have been talking about, which is a smart, cheeky meta thing to do, but also something that potentially they could have taken and pushed a little further. But I liked that what is there. It made the episode feel richer throughout.
Also,
I'm going to hold back from saying anything else there because I don't want to poke the bear one more time.
thank you. Also,
Poke
the
that
fact
bear.
that like you had Jimmy Woo whiteboarding it, and then Kat being commenting on it and be like, "Oh, I'm so into this." Like, it was really just a fun kind of both
Yeah,
worlds type
I
of
mean,
thing.
the implication there, this is very much jumping into the episode proper, which I feel like after 17 minutes of a podcast, we probably should do. But no, that's not your
Wow.
fault, Pete. Don't give me the finger. It's all of us.
Wow.
We're all at fault here. Is that there seemed to be an implication that there are more episodes than we've seen, right? Like
Yes.
that she's
I
been
thought that was
binge
cool.
watching this. She was the binge watcher. Jimmy Woo is the guy who's analyzing it. He's looking for the Easter eggs, trying to figure out the mystery. Which I thought was great. Like playing on those two levels of how we view TV shows, I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah, who watches the binge watcher? I agree that felt like definitely a sort of a very slight hum underneath the whole episode of like what a lot of TV now is just like sort of hangout TV, like watching people hang out, and this was like watching us watching this TV show in an interesting way, which I'm always here for. But I also think it added some nice little small turns into the mystery, like you're saying, like the fact that there are other episodes, what actually makes them transition between different eras of television. They ask that question and we don't know the answer. I feel like it might be the outside influence from Sword or from whatever. Wanda gets unsettled in the era of television, so she has to reset. It's all about her resetting once a mistake enters this reality that she's created. And so I thought that was fun. They do a good job of really laying in the mystery in little clues throughout the series.
Let's jump back because we kind of skipped past this moment, and I know Pete mentioned that he really liked it, but I definitely right at the top of the episode when they started with that great shot of the dust floating in air, and I was
Oh
like,
my
okay, is
God.
this Scarlet Witch? What's going on? But immediately when it started to reform, I said, "Oh shit!" out loud when I
Yeah.
saw it. It's one of those things that I think is such a great touchstone for
Yeah.
bringing you back into the MCU nature here. We've I don't think we've ever seen an unblip, right? Like we've
A-
seen
At first, I didn't know what it was. I was like, "Oh, this is a weird thing. I don't know." And then I was like, "Oh, of course, it's a reverse of the blip." Like that was very cool.
Very cool because it was like this thing that the movies pass by, but because we're doing this TV show, the fact that we can kind of live in this moment at a hospital where people are just running around like they're all coming back, and just like seeing these people appear 5 years later was just so intense, and then watching somebody come to the realization of that is just unbelievable.
Well, and I mean, this is definitely, we were talking about this also, not to keep plugging our Patreon Slack, but we were talking about this a little bit about
Seems
what
like you're just
movies you
plugging.
need to watch beforehand. It's super necessary not just to watch Endgame, but also Captain Marvel before this,
Yeah.
because you hear Captain Marvel
Yeah, you
over
do.
over Monica Rambeau reforming. Clearly, we find out that her mom has died, which is
Oh,
super sad.
Sad.
And then we get a little hint of her with the Captain. Was she Maria Rambeau? Is
Maria.
that
Yep.
what it is?
Photon.
Maria Photon Rambeau,
Photon,
which we got
yeah.
in the movie as well.
That was I
Super
was
fun.
happy we got the picture because it was not. I was like, all right, wait, where is the Rambo that I know? And then when we saw, that's when it really
Rambeau.
clicked for me seeing her picture.
The Rambo, you know.
I
Better the Rambo you know
than the Rambo
other
you
one.
don't know. The Rambo you don't Rambo. I was also going to say the fact that the snap was such a big part of the Infinity War Endgame movies, I feel like another franchise might be like, all right, we did that, let's move on. But Marvel does such a good job of owning every piece of the mythology here, and to use that as, like you said, a touchstone, I think is just so smart and really keeps us always invested in everything that's come before.
I mean, I would love it if like movies do things and then the TV dives into the minutia of all the little thing. I mean, that
Yeah, that's great.
very nerdy and very cool. I was losing it.
So as we're kind of starting to walk through here, I think two other things that we potentially could talk about. One, sentient weapon observation and response department. That's what we
Yes.
encounter pretty quickly. That was established by Maria Rambeau up until she died. She passed it off to this guy Tyler Hayward, who doesn't seem suspicious at all. But in the comics, it's sentient world observation and response department. There's definitely hints that there's something more going on there. They're starting to build
Oh,
weapons
yeah,
and
just
other
walking
things. So,
through.
what are your theories? What do you think's going on here? How does this tie into WandaVision? Are they setting up other things for down the road? What's your take?
Feels like they're setting up other things for down the road. I think the difference between weapon and world, I think is huge. Sentient weapon are like humans. They're like superheroes, essentially.
Mhm.
So the fact that they're trying to control them sort of reminds me of the comic book Civil War, the Iron Man side, the Hero Registration Act, like a lot of things in the comics that end up being villainous or something that the heroes have to rally together to defeat. The other side is Sword was a big part of Skrull, of like defeating the Skrulls, and the Skrulls one in disguise, it shapeshifted into Sword to try to take control of it over a ton of different comic book stories. Maybe that's another direction we're going to get here.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
go
the
ahead,
fact
Pete.
that like when they're walking through and it looks like they're building giant evil robots, I was just like,
I think that was a space shuttle. Uh,
was it?
Maybe a
I don't know.
Sentinel.
Ooh.
There we go. There it is. This is a crazy connection. I did want to talk about this just because we're talking about this suspicious guy, Tyler Hayward. Some people caught on
Tyler.
to
Don't trust anybody with that name.
100%. There's no Tyler Hayward from the comics, but there was a character named Brian Hayward who was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was working for Hydra. He was part of Project Centipede, which is like the superpower spine thing that they
Oh, yeah, I
did for a
remember
while.
that. Yeah.
People, we talked about this before on the podcast, but people have picked up a lot of potential connections to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What are the chances they're actually going to tie into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. versus just kind of like skim the surface there or ignore it entirely and it's just coincidence?
I think at most skimming, just like most people,
Mhm.
skimming the surface of S.H.I.E.L.D. is sort of the way that it happened.
Pete, do
I
you
don't
think
know.
full on
I mean,
the cavalry is coming?
yeah, it would be interesting if it was like a shields versus sword type of thing that could happen. I don't know. I'm very excited for more shield references just because I want to get Coulson in there.
Well,
I mean,
I
And
was
the cavalry.
Coulson, this is interesting. Coulson actually was in there. He was in Avengers
Yeah,
and
no shit,
Thor.
dickhead. I'm talking about
I
cool
think
things.
I think Jimmy Woo is our Coulson for perhaps
All right.
going forward. It's really cool to see him here, and I think the Ant-Man and the Wasp connection, obviously, but also starting to think about him from the comics, who he goes on to run Agents of Atlas, which is this whole other organization that I think could be fun.
Plus, I really hope that he does get a family. It sounds like that's something he really wants. It was a
That's
beautiful
nice.
little moment there.
And he also, like, to carry on his sort of game and style from the original Ant-Man and Wasp movie is super fun. He's such a different energy from Kat Dennings' character, who is just like sarcastic and in everybody's face, and he's just sort of like goofy and being funny in a totally different way is great.
I really did like the way kind of like Kat showed up, walked through all the kind of like madness, and was able to kind of like right the ship.
Two quick things about that. One, Jimmy Woo introducing his card. He finally learned the card trick from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Great.
Yeah.
Super fun.
So fun.
Just a fun little bit there. And Darcy, she's now got a doctorate. So that's very exciting. We last saw her, I think, in Thor: The Dark World. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that I had a question about, and I think this is like classic action movie stuff, and it's fine, and I'm not mad about it or anything like that, but it was very funny to me that after Monica disappears into the dome or whatever it is, uh, there's suddenly hundreds of people there, but the only people who are doing anything are Darcy and Jimmy. What are the rest of these people doing?
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
what,
they do
what
say
is
it.
going on with them?
They do say it's a huge cross organization, cross military thing. So I think there's a lot of people just being ready in case something emerges from there. I think it's soldiers setting up
There's
perimeter.
people who just studying the force field and stuff like that. I mean, they're the people who care about what's trying to happen. There are other people there for different nefarious reasons, and so it'll be
Nefarious?
interesting. Oh yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah.
Who? You
can't
mean like
trust.
like
You
people
get a giant group of people like that. Not everybody's on the same team there.
like people's overcharging other people for bottled water and stuff?
oh yeah, yeah.
Like
It's
selling
they're-
T-shirts?
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
probably a hot dog man hanging out there, and he's like, "Yeah, they're $5 now."
Yep.
I used to sell them in this empty field, but then all you people showed up, and now I'm charging $5.
Now I'm gonna be able to retire.
So there are a couple of interesting things talking about this staff that's working outside here. We find out that the beekeeper, as far as we know, nothing to do with AIM. Potentially, that was kind of our theory there.
Yeah.
But actually is working with Sword, crawls through, and gets changed into this beekeeper once he passes the TV annihilation wall, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
Lou.
not only the beekeeper, but then one of the worst jump ropes ever made. You guys remember that jump rope? It was
Mhm.
like it would pinch your skin when you were trying to use it. Oh, just seeing that jump rope made me so angry.
And
Well,
how
this
long?
is another
How
thing
long?
that we. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Pete. How long were you on the Olympic jump roping team as a child? I know this is a big
No,
issue for you.
It was just a shitty gift that I had to use.
Sorry, Alex. You
Well,
probably had.
hey, I hope. Listen, if any of you kids out there are listening to this, use your shitty gifts too. All right, you can make the Olympics someday, like Pete.
Yeah, like Pete did.
I do think it's interesting. On that note, we talked a little bit about Geraldine / Monica having the clothes that she had in Sitcom World when she came outside. Same thing happens with this jump rope, coaxial cord, whatever it actually is. So that was kind of fascinating as well to see some things are left over, some things do make it outside.
Well, I think that will become that's actually an important point, I think, because it shows that what Wanda affects in the bubble lasts after the bubble, after it leaves the bubble, or after the bubble goes away. For instance,
At
her
least
children.
for a little bit.
Her children, perhaps.
Right.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think the two big ones there are her children and also Vision, who we get reaffirmed the Marvel Universe knows he's dead. We do get that horrifying moment.
Great moment.
So well done. But the way that was shot with him blurry in the distance and then cutting to the close-up, like he is caved in on his head from Thanos pulling out the gem in that earlier shot, but we don't get that reveal until she turns around. We're jumping over so many things that we probably need to get back to in the episode, but let's talk about the end here where Wanda sees Vision clearly dead, convinces him that he's alive, says she's totally in control, and then Monica reveals outside Wanda, it's all Wanda.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm overthinking it. I've certainly been of the opinion for the first 3 episodes that, yes, this is Wanda, this is all Wanda. And the second I heard that, I was like, no, there's something else going on here. Somebody else is in control.
Really, that's interesting. Maybe that's where Agatha Harkness comes in, because I did think it was interesting. There's the montage where they're naming all the townspeople and what roles they're playing, and we never get Agnes, obviously, here. So I think that just shows that she is definitely outside of a normal townsperson. I don't know. I took another fact to hear the other way. They talk a lot about the CMBR, the background radiation from, or relic radiation that was there from the Big Bang. I think that is a signal of just how powerful she is, and the fact that what she does is permanent. It's permanent as the Big Bang was.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the popular theory is this is how Monica is going to get powers. She has powers in the comic books. She's probably going to take on the name Photon. To take it one step further, I don't know how much I believe in this, but there's certainly been a lot of speculation about maybe this series is going to lead into mutants in some way. Certainly Miss Marvel lives in New Jersey, and we know that's coming up pretty soon. So if there is some sort of Wanda explosion, M-Day style event or something like that, where it just irradiates all of New Jersey and gives people powers, that would be pretty funny, right?
Yeah,
All
that would be
mutants
scary.
coming from New Jersey.
All mutants come from New Jersey. Bummer.
Oh man,
I'm
that
into
would be
it.
no
Yeah.
way, man.
Wolverine, total hairy
Yeah.
dude for the beach.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Hey, it's
Oh.
me, Wolverine. Hey, you like Bruce
Hey, it's me,
Springsteen?
Wolverine, the situation Howlet.
Oh my god.
Everybody's dream. Because I don't think that's what the way they're going to go. I think it cheapens mutants as a thing in the Marvel universe to have it be just an offhand creation of the Scarlet Witch.
I had the opposite reaction, Selvin, when she was like, it's all Wanda. I was kind of like, yeah, I mean, that would explain why she went in and then all of a sudden was kind of like mind wiped. And she didn't know who she was until she touched Wanda's hand. And then she was like, oh, and like got right into character. So I feel like it does make sense that Wanda is through this trauma kind of creating this whole thing for herself.
So a couple of quick things about the residents, just because we talked about that. Most of their names, as far as I can tell, don't mean anything, except for the guy who plays Herb is named John Collins, which, by the way, I thought it was a very funny note where they were like, Herb, played by John Collins, Mrs. Hart, played by Sharon Davis.
Yeah, that was really
very
fun.
funny in-joke thing. But John Collins, who plays Herb, and Sharon Davis, who plays Mrs. Hart, are both art directors on WandaVision. So
Yeah.
I don't think that means anything. That's just a fun little Easter egg they
Oh,
put
well,
in there.
not.
Also, I definitely don't think this is an Easter egg in any way. It just made me laugh. But Mustache Man, his real
Jones.
name is Harold Copter, which is basically Howlicopter.
Yeah.
Very close, which it just has a doofy name. There you go. And then the other, there was one other thing. Let's talk about Agnes and how she does or does not connect to whoever's in witness protection, because that's a very offhand thing that they throw out. That's the impetus for Jimmy Woo being there at Westview, is because the person in witness protection has disappeared. He uses him as a pronoun, and then Darcy enters he. So we can kind of assume it's a man. My first thought was, oh, okay, Agnes is the one in witness protection. Probably not. Who is it? Like, that's got to play in at some point, right?
I agree. I'm curious. It could, maybe this is where we get the Grim Reaper and the Wonder Man connection, and maybe that's what sets her off initially. Because we do need to find out what triggers this trauma, because it clearly wasn't the death of the Vision like we had speculated. It's something.
It seems like it is.
I think that's the underlying issue, but that's not the actual catalyst that caused her to take over this town with her hex powers and build this TV reality. Something happened there, and we just don't know anything about what that is. And that may be the mystery that we're going to unravel going forward. I think it will have to do with Agatha Harkness, Agnes in there, and whoever this missing person is going to end up being.
So just real quick. So you're saying if somebody you love died, you wouldn't go to New Jersey, kick everybody out of a town, and then start your own town based on television shows that you saw from your childhood?
I mean, are you saying if I have Scarlet Witch's powers, or I just have to myself go to a town in New Jersey and be like, hey, get out of here. I'm doing a little play about my dead friend.
I'm going through a loss and I need to work this out. Yeah.
My friend Pete died, and he wanted me to come to this small New Jersey town and take it over briefly.
Yeah.
Very briefly, turn it into Tommy Boy, a fantasy of Tommy Boy.
Please.
If
I'm with you,
die,
Justin,
I think
you've
beyond,
got to reenact Tommy Boy.
I agree. I mean, this is what sort of, in my mind, pushes no, they're telling us too early that Wanda is the villain of this piece. There's something else going on here. To throw out a couple of theories that are probably very wrong, but the person in witness protection could be Ralph, Agnes's husband, who keeps getting mentioned that we've never seen. It's also possible, like, it could be a villain. It could be a Strucker, like we've talked about before, or somebody from Hydra who had to be in witness protection, started Abe there, and there was some sort of inciting incident event that kicked Wanda into high gear here. We don't have enough information yet, but it's too much of a dangling detail not to follow up in some way.
I also think. Go ahead, Pete.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say the fact that Kat is watching the shows and taking notes, and then the commercials came up and she didn't say anything, to me kind of felt like that it would be Hydra. That would be the.
It is very funny.
They feel like they're not quite looking into enough theories.
100%. They're treating commercials like actual commercials of TV show. Like, oh, we need to watch this. Let's go to the bathroom. Yeah. But it's like, no, those are clues. Those are big clues, you guys.
Fast forward through this. We don't need to see this commercial.
One other clue, and again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but those weirdly ripped cops from Eastview right at the top of the episode.
What?
Definitely felt like there was something going on with them. Like they were a little too ominous, I felt, for what the role demanded.
I feel like those are somehow creations of Wanda as well to try to keep people out. And their like job is to turn people away who might happen to go in despite the sort of hex on the town. But jumping back a little bit though,
I will. Oh, wait, sorry. One last thing that I want to say about the cops. I didn't catch on to this. This is Brett White, a friend of our show who we work with, caught on. But their license plate does say 1966 on it.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's the year that AIM was introduced in Marvel Comics.
Wow, that's a deep cut.
that's a deep
I don't
cut
know.
right there.
Nice.
Just
That's
throwing that out there.
Could
I
also
think
be pretty
license.
arbitrary because I do think, to your point earlier about
Yeah.
who's causing this, the fact that in the comics, Agatha Harkness was the next door neighbor to Vision and Scarlet Witch and was observing Wanda. I feel like maybe in the years since Vision died, her powers started to deepen and maybe she's losing control of them. So Agatha's there to monitor her as a danger because she's sort of losing control, and then perhaps this villain that was there is someone who is pushing her powers, pushing her trauma, which causes her to finally go into this fantasy world.
Yep.
And that would, I think, play into the Grim Reaper Wonder Man side of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens there. Before we move on here, we've certainly speculated quite a bit, but there's lots of other great moments in the episode. Pete, anything you want to call out in particular?
Well, I couldn't get enough of Kat in this episode where she talks about like she has so many great one-liners, and it's just also really fun how quickly she's able to like assess what's going on, process it, and make decisions. Like that whole clown car comment and the way she was breaking it down, like they have no idea what's happening. All of us in here are just kind of like a crazy shot in the dark. I did really like how like she like broke down like she washes dishes once an episode, barf, and then the twins, what a twist. I love that.
Yeah.
Justin, what about you? Any moments you want to call out?
The whiteboard, I think, is something we didn't really talk about. You do see on one side of it scrolls sort of on the edge. I thought that was interesting. And then the first question up top is why the hexagonal shape, which I thought was something. I don't know exactly. That feels like a clue as to maybe.
Yeah, because there's a beekeeper and then that shape, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder, getting back to the AIM theory, we talked about the hexagons, I think, in the first episode of the podcast. So I like that we weren't necessarily on the wrong track with that.
Yeah.
But what if it is, again, I know I'm like sticking with this thing, but like, what if it is Wanda into this because Vision is alive, she has kids, she's happy. So that's what's keeping her along. But at the same time, her subconscious is giving out clues of AIM with the beekeeper, with the hexagons, with these other things, sort of shouting under everything that's going on to try to free herself.
I think that's true, and that keeps her to as a hero, I think, throughout this story, because I don't think we would want to lose that.
Also, I liked this thing that Vision doesn't like what's going on, like the shot of Vision kind of like, hey, what's wrong, Wanda? And she's like, everything's fine, let's go watch something. He's like, so like I'm glad that they're kind of keeping that theme going on for what's to come. I feel like there's going to be a real WandaVision showdown at some point.
And I think an emotional showdown and something where maybe Scarlet Witch will have to give up her love for him.
And great use of Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix there at the end. That was really nice.
That's another thing I wanted to say, that you see the credits are starting to be influenced by the content of the show. In the background, maybe I hallucinated this, but isn't the dead Vision head in the background of the credits? So I thought that was interesting as a little nod there.
Yeah. Good stuff. Before we wrap up here, let's talk about what's on your vision board for the next episode. Justin, you want to go first?
I feel like we have to jump back into the Wanda side of it and get back into some TV after this episode. This was a nice break, but we got to get back to those big breathtaking moments we saw early. And then my long-term vision board is Wanda. I know I just literally said the opposite of this, but is Wanda being set up as the next big villain? Is she perhaps being positioned the multiverse of madness? She seems like she could be a big creator of that or queen of that or something. Does this series push her into that way, and then this becomes the true first step into the next phase of the cinematic universe?
Pete, what about you? What's on your vision board?
Well, for me, it's who do we send into the bubble next? Like, who do we, now that this failed with Rambeau, who do you send after Rambeau? You know
What
I mean?
about
Like,
Rambo, the Force of Freedom?
Right,
Yeah,
but I'm
First
just saying,
Blood.
like, who do we have on the roster that we can send in next to kind of get more information, which is what I'm excited about.
Rambo.
Yeah.
We already said that.
Yeah.
I got a good one. How about Jersey Wolverine? This new character we created.
Forget about it. No, I feel like we are going to go back into the sitcom world a little bit, but I'm excited to see who Jimmy is going to kind of get on his team to send in next.
Yeah, we'll see. Getting back to what we talked about right before this section, I think the thing that I'm really looking forward to is Vision exploring this more. You know, we got a hint of this.
Yeah.
I think the first 3 episodes really worked as an act, you know, with an emotional arc, with thrust, with everything. Potentially what we're getting here, this 3 episode chunk is more, okay, what's going on in the outside world versus the inside world. But what I want to see is Vision explore his instincts and continue to push this, because he's dead. So if he tries to go outside this dome, what happens to him? What happens to him emotionally when he starts to maybe not trust Wanda quite as much? We've seen them together. Now potentially we see them break apart. That's going to be very emotionally fraught, and I'm excited and nervous to follow it going forward.
I think he
Plus,
turns
there's
into
this whole thing.
I think he turns into a Roomba if Vision leaves.
Oh, no.
So
That's how I got my Roomba.
Yep. Season 2 will be
You
Wanda.
killed
my
Vision
husband.
for your Roomba?
Yeah.
Oh, that is too much.
The Roomba's slogan is every Roomba was a husband someday.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
awful.
that's exactly right.
You-
The second
By
season,
that logic, you could be turned into a Roomba.
that's the fear
What
we all
happens, it
have.
happens.
Yeah.
Season 2, Wanda Roomba.
I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about, like, topically having this right now, this like bubble going on while we're all kind of living in this like dome of, oh shit, like I can't go outside with all this, without all this stuff on, is kind of crazy and freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's a good
It's
point.
very timely, and I'm freaked out.
Sorry, Pete.
No doubt about
As
that.
we start to wrap up here, a couple of things to plug. You can support us at patreon.com/comic book club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube. Come back out. We would love to chat with you about all your WandaVision theories. Oh, Pete has one more point.
I just wanted to say, we're talking about Patreon and we're talking about whiteboards, and we got to give a shout out to Aaron and John, who were the original kind of whiteboard starters of like, oh man, you got to do things on a whiteboard to figure things out. And now that's really come true.
Aaron and John are 2 very lovely supporters of our Patreon. Pete is talking crazy talk right now.
Sure. Undercut what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be
No,
nice.
no, it's very nice. They
Shout out.
did not invent whiteboards.
They talked about how important it was, and I didn't listen, and now I feel bad. I should have a whiteboard at home.
That's true.
Great. All podcasts bleed into one podcast. So yeah, come join us at 7 p.m. Crowdcast and YouTube, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen to the show. Socially, Marvel Vision Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. ComicBookClubLive.com for this podcast and more. Until next time, start with the basket first, everybody.